What do we know of the latest, and what happens from here given this pivotal milestone?
Well, this is the big question going forward. Does this mean essentially that Prime Minister Netanyahu is allowed to declare victory and push Israel again toward a ceasefire that would end the fighting that began a year ago? Or the other question, though, is who now can they speak to from the side of Hamas? Who has the power within that organization to be able to coalesce around an end to the conflict and a ceasefire if that's what they want to do? I mean, what's clear, though, is that the organization is severely weakened. It's been decimated over that year of fighting, and it's now lost its most senior leader. You can also expect the Biden administration to exert a lot of pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu to essentially say, hey, take the win. It is time to end this thing.
Well, importantly, I look back to a note this morning from Signum Global, which does market analysis and analysis on geopolitical events. And I think that this is the kind of critical piece of this, that Sinwar's death doesn't unlock the end of the Gaza war. And in fact, it raises questions about whether it could unlock a ceasefire and peace deal. What is the tone?
Well, I mean, clearly that's the big question the Biden administration is going to want to answer. I mean, the issue the U.S. has had all along is what constitutes victory for the Israeli government, because you can eliminate the entire leadership of Hamas and essentially decimate Gaza, but can you destroy that idea? The group remains popular. It has substantial backing from some in the Gaza Strip. So when Prime Minister Netanyahu says essentially we are not going to stop until this group is eliminated, you can't destroy every single fighter and every single supporter of the group. And so at what point does he have the cover to essentially say, okay, we are done here, and what are the risks then that Hamas could essentially reconstitute once the fighting is over? So you can be sure Israel and the U.S. are going to be having those conversations, but clearly for President Joe Biden, who wants this thing over as quickly as possible, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Netanyahu, who's set to speak in about an hour to declare victory.
Now, two major leaders of Hamas killed within a matter of months, but another question is how might Hamas respond, and what may Sinwar's successor look like?
Right. So the question is, what capability does Hamas still have? They do still retain the ability to fire rockets and stage attacks on Israel despite the campaign. But one of the big issues now is that who succeeds him, as you mentioned, and where is that person? So there aren't a lot of Hamas leaders in Gaza anymore who would have the sway, the authority to be able to shape the organization. A lot of them are based overseas, particularly in Qatar. And the theory there is that they're essentially going to be more susceptible to pressure from Qatar, from Egypt, from the U.S., from others to steer into a deal to say, listen, essentially your entire leadership structure is destroyed. Your organization is severely hobbled. It is time to agree at long last to that ceasefire. Whether that person, whoever it may be, has the authority again to have the group coalesce and make sure that it abides by that ceasefire is another question entirely.
Well, that is another question, too. What is the goal when it comes to Gaza at this juncture?
I mean, this is a question that the U.S. administration has been asking all along, and it's been one of the central points of contention between Biden and Netanyahu, saying, listen, if you are essentially reducing this entire area to rubble, what is your long-term strategic goal? You can't just essentially empty out the entire Gaza Strip. When do you say the operation is done? Prime Minister Netanyahu has always said, we won't stop until we achieve total victory. And then the other thing he adds to that is essentially we don't want a situation where Hamas is allowed to reconstitute. Of course, the challenge is if Israel leaves Gaza, stops the campaign, does that give the group oxygen to reconstitute? And that's something they've never been able to square. But what you can be sure we're going to see now is a lot of pressure from the U.S. side to define the terms of the strategy, define the terms for ending the war, and then starting to look to the day after how to rebuild Gaza without Hamas.
What do you make of the response so far from Israel? You mentioned a little bit earlier, Nick, that we do expect Bibi Netanyahu to speak very shortly within the next hour. What do you expect from him?
Well, I think there are going to be two things I'm really going to be looking out for there. One is he going to essentially say, okay, hey, we did it. It is now time to end the campaign. Or is he going to say, our job is not done, we will continue to press ahead? The other question here, obviously, is that you have Hamas, but you also have Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Israel has only stepped up its campaign against Hezbollah, has shown no indication, despite killing a lot of Hezbollah's top leadership, including Hassan Nasrallah, that it's willing to let up that fight. So while there may be an easing off or perhaps even a declaration of victory over Hamas, they are going to continue to press on against Hezbollah. And then obviously there's the other question of Iran and what Israel does there.
Well, and we only have less than a minute left here, but I think that is another important aspect of this, where Israel stands with other neighbors as well, and where it stands in Lebanon at this moment and its response to Hezbollah.
Well, I mean, I think you can expect that Israel is probably going to keep up its attacks on Hezbollah. It's given no indication that it's willing to let up there. The big question we're all still waiting for, of course, is Israel has threatened to retaliate against Iran after its ballistic missile barrage on October 1st, and we're still waiting to see what that response looks like. So is this a situation where Israel is able to take a step back and stop, or do they say now we're turning our attention to what they have described as the real head of the snake, which is Iran, and what they do about that, whether they turn their full attention to Iran?